Hi everyone, good morning and welcome all. So today we're going to talk about AI in identity, which is the most contemporary topic you can think. And so we heard a lot about GPTs and LLMs and all sorts of things earlier this morning. So we'll see how it's going to impact us in general, identity, and what it means to new age companies, startups, the developers, and the big tech platforms. My name is Bharadwaj. I work for Verizon. I'm a solution executive. I work currently on 5G edge technologies. And for the last many years, I've been in identity projects. I worked on Horizon projects, GSMA, Mobile Connect, many other projects. So identity has been a red line in my career. And so with my ongoing current work on with AI, I would like to touch upon some of the key concepts. And I thought actually, I'm actually the moderator for this panel, but I thought, why should I not have a privilege to present some slides? So if they can present. So I made a few slides also. We generate a lot of data every day. So the idea is, we are living highly digitized world. Like Katrina mentioned, we cannot live off the grid. We have to consume digital service. We are digitized in every step of our life. And we are actually connected users, devices. Device could be your phone, it could be your surveillance camera or a sensor. They're all connected to the network. Network goes to platform, and the platform and the applications. This is the red line is the data transaction. So we are generating, if I'm right, it's 25 quintillion bytes of data every day, which is around 1,000 billions of bytes of data. So with this much amount of data, it gives a lot of opportunities, also poses a lot of threats. So a lot of data that brings threats is basically you can use that data and get insights into the digital assets or the crown jewels, the enterprises or people, what have you. And you can use some AI and machine learning models or even large learning models to actually mine that information and use to your advantage, depending on who you are. So you could actually do the social engineering with very persuasive emails or convincing way to extract information. You can create chatbots that are very convincing and human-like conversations that extract, that befriend you. And then you heard about deepfakes, which are absolutely stunningly real, hyper-realistic deepfakes and synthetic media, for instance. You can mimic biometrics and you can do biometric spoofing. And then social media attacks, suddenly if they decide, because AI give the power of creating content instantly. You can post a review or you can comment, spread across all platforms, make a disinformation campaign instantly. And you can also use social media to analyze. For example, if you have a company, they have posted a job for a SQL database engineer, and then you find that job posting on LinkedIn, and then you have another guy who is also working in that company doing some other technology. So you can scrape all that information and to find what technologies these people use, and then you can actually, this is all automated now. So people had to work for it, to do this analysis, to find out what's going on. And now it's all automated and it's quite handy for these people. So, but hey, there's a positive side, because if they have these tools, the same tools are available for the people to protect themselves too. So you can use AI to automate a lot of your processes, make it efficient, and also be ready for these kind of attacks and make yourself defend. And also there is an opportunity for innovation. So how you actually run your business and make yourself stand out. So you can automate the onboarding process. You can use multi-factor authentication. Like Katrina mentioned, you can use multi-factor authentication. That you can even add dynamic multi-factor. So you can, if you have a few authentication methods, you can decide which one to invoke randomly, for example. Continuous authentication, and you can dynamic adaptive access controls. These are different ways to actually use your AI tools in your enterprise to safeguard your assets. So how do you manage? I'll just close this last slide. Essentially, AI, because we're dealing with a lot of data and algorithms, you have to really try to reduce the algorithmic bias. How can we do that? By constantly training these models. And there is something called data poisoning. So the bad actors can actually introduce some data that can actually compromise, or that will reduce the effectiveness of prediction, or the estimation of these models. So that's when you have to really keep your data clean and keep up to date, or train with different test sets, so that the data is not easy to be breached. Then you have to keep patching AI systems, and you have to continue doing penetration testing, security audits. This is all besides your NIST framework or overall your enterprise security architecture. So in my mind, AI brings really a lot of efficiency, the great capabilities that will actually help enterprises to innovate faster and stand out and make it's also like you hear our next speakers how they can help to create new companies quite fast. So this is my slide, and then now I invite one of the panel speakers, Paris, and I let her introduce herself. Thanks.
Hello, my name is Paris. I'm originally Canadian. I grew up in Toronto, but I've been living across Europe for the last several years, and I was really drawn to the Netherlands for the work that it was doing, specifically in sustainability and carbon markets, actually. So I came to the Netherlands working alongside a company that was helping other companies reach their net zero targets and verifying the data for them to meet those targets. So it was really within this voluntary carbon markets that I started to see a lot of the issues that came with data, how to secure it, how to make it effective for decision making, and the security aspect of it. Currently I work at Abex Technologies as a digital product manager. Abex is building tools to enable and empower people with better technology for market-based solutions to solve many of the challenges we face, like climate change and the energy transition. So we have a specific focus in commodity markets. At Abex, our mission is really to build smarter markets. So smarter markets is better technology that underpins global markets to make them function more efficiently with more trust and more privacy. It's also the title of a podcast that I helped pioneer with the rest of the organization. And we've had many esteemed speakers talk about digital identity, data privacy, commodity, and carbon markets. So as a digital product manager at Abex, I work across the work streams, and my specific focus is on our ID++ and digital identity products and verified credential issuance. So what I've observed within the voluntary carbon markets is this problem of the data dead end. We've had this era of like over collection of data, and now these are supposed to be not at the same time, but it's fine. So this over collection of data has led to the data effectiveness not being as strong as it should be, and because we have this over collection of data, it's making it more difficult for us to make decisions based on the data. The second problem we observe with data is the verification aspect of it. That right now it's collected, hoarded, and it sits idle, so there's no real re-verification process of that data. And so when it's time to be used, it's not always the most accurate and authentic. And finally, we're seeing the economics of data change, where it's going from being something that used to be very lucrative to something that's becoming more and more a liability for companies. And we've been seeing that with almost weekly data breaches that we see. The latest one with Okta, where they came out and said that about 1% of their customer data was compromised, but then kind of secretly revealed later that it's kind of more like 100%. So even the companies that were entrusting to keep the data safe have not really found the architecture or paradigm, and the keynote speakers also mentioned this, to really safeguard that data effectively. So in the context of the carbon markets, these three problems persist. Because of the nature of a carbon market, it is voluntary, so the data is not standardized, it's very messy, it's all over the place. And so making decisions that lead towards what the legislation is trying to lead companies and governments towards, the data is not there, or it's not, we're not able to analyze it in the appropriate ways. Verification is a big part of that, because there are lots of companies that are greenwashing at risk of using the data in the wrong way, manipulating the data. So verification is a big part of that. And also the privacy issues within the carbon markets. There are many market participants that don't feel comfortable sharing their data with the market. And you can't have an effective market without trusted and verified data. So my point is here that in a sort of existential crisis like climate change mitigation, we want to make sure that data is not leading us to the dead end. So how can we start to think about data and, I'm sorry, these points are not supposed to be all here. I think it's an issue with maybe the compatibility of the computer, but I'll make do. So how can maybe AI help us in solving these challenges? Well, certainly AI can help us analyze the data. Like we had mentioned before, it will help us make sense of the data. It can maybe also help us improve the quality of the data, especially with personalized AI and these AI chatbots. There are, for companies, there are scope 3 emissions that are very difficult to abate, and those emissions are when a customer buys a product, uses it, disposes of it, and those emissions, because they leave the company's value chain, are very difficult to track. So personalized AI and AI can start to help us understand human behavior across not just people that are using one product, but millions, if not billions of people. And then companies can start to mitigate those emissions from scope 3, or they can at least not be greenwashing because they have better information about how their products are being used. But with AI, and I think this is an issue that we all kind of know already, is like the AI is only as good as the data that we give it. So the question about privacy here is like, who is collecting the data? Where is it coming from? How is it being analyzed? How are the models being trained? Who's getting the results? And who gets to see the results of it? And also, I mean, we've kind of seen this movie before. We've trusted companies, the Metas and the Googles of the world, the Oktas of the world, the Amazon Web Services of the world to secure the data. And if they're having issues with it, should we trust artificial intelligence if we don't completely understand it? So if we think about the effectiveness, verification, and the privacy of the data, can we really start to begin to think of a paradigm that meets all three criteria and helps us kind of build, not to take from the title of the podcast, but a smarter market, one that functions much more effectively? And I think there is a very logical and elegant solution to this, which is strong digital identity and verified credentials. I think when we think about identities, sometimes we think about it wrong. And we think that that identity has to be tied to a person. But identity can be identifiers and assigned to things. So within the voluntary carbon market, it doesn't necessarily have to be who is using the cook stove or who is the company, but it can be assigned as an identity to a company, a verification body, an auditor, a regulator. And so the entire ecosystem can feel safer transacting with the information flows and the data flows through their verified credentials between each other through protocol-based information flows. And yes, so I think digital identity is really crucial at every step of the way. With artificial intelligence, we can, of course, use it to augment our data analysis, but you can't throw artificial intelligence at this problem without strong identity. And that separation of identity from the authority to do something online is the difference between who you are and what you are allowed to do, or you returning to a certain thing to do the same thing, and where you're entitled to do something. So I think that paradigm really starts to help build trust in the system, because the identity is not attached to the credential, and the credentials can operate with each other. So if there's like one thing I want to leave as the idea here is that you can't have a smarter market or a better market without strong identity. And so that paradigm needs to be developed alongside all of the other great technologies that are developing. And so that's it.
Thank you. Thank you, Paris. Zhu, can you please, floor is yours.
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm Su. I'm currently a co-founder of a FAI corporation. So what we're doing is we try to figure out how to use the artificial intelligence to solve, we think is one of the largest problem, is how to process and handling your data. So I think Paris mentioned you got this data overload. I think all the company has data overload, but then we believe there must be a way that you use AI to process all your data and then get the insights. And then a little bit background of myself is I have physics and MBA backgrounds, so that's why I think I'm very interested in this technology. And then previously I worked at Deloitte as a senior analytics specialist, and then at Aegon as a senior financial risk manager. So most of my experience is in handling data and get insights and present to the senior managements. So I'm going to show you guys two cases that we are kind of experiencing, and then hope it has value for you guys. So basically the idea, like what we are trying to build is we try to build these AI agents that are going to streamline data to decisions. So think about you have a company, you have what kind of data you have, but you need insights. And then you need to integrate your data sets. Let's say you have SAP, Oracle, right? And then different systems. First integrate the data together, and then you need to validate whether the data is accurate or not, and then you analyze. Once you analyze, you get the decisions, and then the management gonna use the data insights to make decisions. So this is what we are trying to build. You have a source data, and then you this Excel file, and then you input it to our tool. It's not very clear, but then you just like a simple chat box. You said, hey, do a EDA analysis. For those who is not in data science, it's like exploratory data analysis. Just see, okay, what the data is, right? And then the tool will give you this. You have 700 rows, 16 columns, no missing data, and then data types, everything. And then it shows you, okay, based on the data you have maybe some outliers, and then you have the correlations between each data set. I mean, if you work in data analytics, you'll be so excited about this. And then the next step is it give you the insights. Like, okay, this is what management is looking for, like dashboards. I was in analytics. That was the last generation big thing. You know, you build all the Power BI dashboards. But now we have the dashboards. And then, yeah, if you like the results, we will export it like Excel, Word, or PowerPoints, whatever you like. And then when I was working at Deloitte as this analytics specialist, this is what I was doing. And the whole process take me, I don't know, a couple of days once you receive data. But if you go down to the, I was in the audit function, if you go down to the audit team or the clients, that takes them weeks to do the analysis. And the tool takes this like 2 minutes. From beginning to the end, 2 minutes, that's it. That's the power of the technology. So we think is fantastic. But the problem is, okay, your identity and privacy challenge. So you think about that. If you have AI that in the middle can consume all your company information, whatever you have, do all kinds of analysis, who can get access to it? Like I mean, I don't know, we don't have the solution, but we think the architecture, there's so many things need to be rethink, and then I think that will solve the problem. But maybe, and if you guys are like the expert in this domain, maybe we can talk after that. But yeah, for us, we think the technology is there, but the privacy part, the identity part will be a huge challenge if this is going to happen to companies. So this is my number one case. And number two case is my personal things. So I have this startup, right? So we are building technical products. I'm not the technical founder, but I do have a technical team. So the team is creating the tool for me. But one day I was like, you know what? I want to be this AI native company. I just want to know how AI can do the things. So for those, if you use ChatGPT, if you have a GPT-4, then there is a function called the GPT-S. So the point is that you have the typical ChatGPT that you use, and then you condition that GPT into a specific roles. So in my case, I first build my company CEO, say, hey, I talk to the CEO, and I condition the CEO to the role, and I share my company's vision, mission, everything back to the CEO, and then I ask him to hire me a CTO. Now I have the CTO, he also have my pitch deck, like about my company, so both of the guys has my company mission, vision, what I want to build. And then I said, okay, I sort of go to the CTO, I need a technical team, right? I need people to build the tool. What kind of technical person I need? And then what do you think the ideal candidate's profile, like the requirements? So he said, okay, you need all those guys. You need a back-end developer, you need a front-end developer, you need a machine learning engineer, the quality whatever, expert, and you develop, and then you need someone to deal with securities. Because my CTO tells me all the requirements, I then condition GTP into that specific role, and now I have all the AI agents as my employees. And then the way that I communicate is the CEO asks the CTO give reports, like just how company works, at least there. But this worked very well. I like say it's far better than my technical team. I was so surprised. I'm able to build the tool all by myself. Yes. But I mean, this is huge. I mean, I try to figure out what the implication of this. But I think if you really follow the news, I think this also, if you think about OpenAI, what they do, they open up this, they ask all the humans doing this, but I think in the end, they're gonna learn from all of us, and then they create a super agents that basically just can automatically go to any positions and do all the jobs by itself. I think there's something they are opting for, but I don't know exactly. Yeah, so there's some of my thoughts based on what I just shared. I think if you look at the AI, the general trend of AI, I mean, even like not generative AI, now we're talking about generative AI, but even like previously, like machine learning, everything, the trend is the computation power to substitute the domain expertise. That's all. That's like nothing more than that. And then with that, I mean, if you look at my case, I think that there will be a huge impact to the work that plays. I mean, I think in the future, company not going to pay for us the rules or paying for us to spend the time that, I go to the company, I spend 8 hours, I get a paycheck. I think in the end, it will be results driven. And the reason is the following. Sorry, this is the first one I have to mention about that. This is my personal view. I think we have, in the past 100, 200 years, what we're trying to do, as a human, we try to build these huge companies and then standardize all the processes and then ask humans to follow all the processes, right? And then if you quit the job, and then we can easily find the replacements. And then the way we evaluate you is how good you are following the rules. But the whole AI thing is it's just very good at following rules. That's the native competitive advantage. You put the AI there, you tell the rules, you just do whatever you ask me to do. So I think that's going to break this kind of a social contract. You're not going to get paid by the hours or by following the rules. You get paid by generating real impactful results. And then the reason for that is actually it makes basic knowledge and intelligence super cheap. I can get access to the CTO's knowledge and I get access to whatever domain knowledge just by asking questions. So that's all become commodities. And then the next part is the middleman. I think what happened here is, okay, I think about like a legal person. You work in legal, what do? You're just a translator. You have a case and you translate the legal documents and then maybe you translate back to something that senior management can understand. You work at accounting, that's also what you do. You have the business and then you have all the information, you translate the accounting languages and then you translate back to the senior management. Everybody is a middleman. We are doing translating things. But who is the best translator? AI. He just translated everything, like Chinese to English, everything. He translated language, programming language to human language. So if I think anyone who is in this middleman work, you get impacted because you're just translating things. And then there's not a lot of value out of that. But I think once we bypass that stage, I think it's good to delegate all the translation things to the bots, and now we can really release our potential and think about creative solutions and customized solutions. And I think that will be endless. I mean, one example is that when you're single, right, you have a girlfriend-boyfriend problem, and then you got both boyfriend, girlfriend, then you have a marriage problem, right, and then you have a kids problem. You just keep getting problems. I think that there's the same thing here. Like once we solve all the issues, let's say our analytic tools give you all the insights, now you have more problems. You want to get more data, you want to get more insights, it's just more and more. And anyway, that's just my thing in this. There's impacts, but I think still the underlying challenge or opportunity is the identity and the privacy part. It will be a huge thing in the future once you bypass all the middlemen. And then how do you make sure the right people get access to the right information? Because everybody becomes super powerful rather than I was just a single bot in the process. Now I get access to everything. But then we have to make sure you have the right access and identity to this. So the one last thing I want to show you guys, maybe some of you saw this. This is the training cost for GPT-3. So if you use the free version of ChatGPT, you are using GPT 3.5, but this is the pre version. I think this is pretty much open sourced. And then in 2020, if you train such model, it's 4.6 million. And then nowadays it's like 450K last year. And then they estimate like 2030, you train that powerful tool cost $30. So think about that. If the costs really go this low, I mean, that's a trend, right? The computation power is going up so fast. It has to be the trend. And once that's the trend, I don't think there's any company going to reject the idea I'm going to have a couple of AI employees to do things for us. Because first, to build you is not expensive. Second, even run you, I only feed you electricity. That's all you need. But I think that's really going to free a lot of people from this laboratory translation middleman work, and then we're going to do some very meaningful jobs. Yeah, I think that's everything I want to share. I hope you're interested. Yeah.
So I guess we can take some questions for the two speakers. Any questions from the audience?
It seems that this is only linear. So one AI will give us a result that we might or might not trust. Why not have an entirely different AI with different algorithms that shows me the validity of what I'm looking at in a completely different way? Might that not be a solution to regain trust in what AI tells me?
May I reply to that? Yes. What if the second AI tells you, yeah, I'm 95% sure? The heck are you going to do with that?
I don't have a clue.
And that's exactly my point. No amount of technology and AI can compensate for human stupidity or willingness to believe anything. But that's like my opinion. I'm going to talk about that end of the day. Sorry.
Yeah, I think once you think about AI, once it's like right now we train it, but once it starts to train itself, you'll never be able to understand what it can. You'll never be able to.
There's a big lump of data we don't comprehend. With a machine, we don't comprehend. How can we trust? So
we cannot physically, our brains cannot conceptualize what it can. And yeah, I think that's what happened. Like it's kind of maybe a rumor, but with this AI, open AI, why Sam Altman was fired and rehired. They wondered, they're scared that we don't really know what it is and what it can do. And so, like, should we start using it?
And also, I think this is a writing question. I say in my case, I needed
So I need a CTO or whatever people help me to build the products. And then if I go to the market, I hire someone, I'm not sure if that one is more accurate than the AI. Right? So relatively, I think the AI is giving me more trustworthy answers than the human that I randomly hire. Let's say if I'm not very good with hiring that kind of person, I may hire the wrong one. But relatively, I think the AI gives me more confidence than that. And another case I want to bring up is when maybe Google created their first chatbots or whatever. I think back then, I think they just try to, like the bots, get above 51% chance to win. If you think you're above 51%, then that's it. That's a good move. It's not 100% better, right? It's just like 51, but you accumulate all the 51%, then you have amazing results. Yeah, I think I think the AI is maybe not 100% accurate, but if you like 51% accurate, it's already powerful.
It's about accuracy. I think the question is more about if we're going to use it, we need to find a way to use it with better identity tools. Like it cannot just perpetuate the problem we're already in about data being used, and then I mean AI can also be used to do malicious acts with data.
Definitely.
Talk about believability as well as no false promises. Remember, GPT 1 year ago entered the market. Microsoft didn't say this is the best tool and it's got to give you all the best answers. No, it said, here, have this tool. It might be wrong, have fun with it. Yeah. And GPT took the world by storm. Then Google's Bard came up saying, ours is bigger and better and will not hallucinate. And it fucked up just once during the demo, even though GPT messes up all the time. And Google stocks went down, not because it was worse or anything, but because they created the false promise of our AI will always be right. There is no 100% model that is always truthful. Generative AI gambles. It literally gambles what words you want to hear, what pictures you want to see. Oh, they caught me. They caught me. It will never always be correct. There you go. But it doesn't have to always be correct, right? Spelling check isn't 100% either. Okay, I'll shut up.
No, thank you. No, that was insightful. I think we'll continue this conversation. Thanks, Peter.
My apologies for the delay. I did send the presentation, but I sent the wrong one. And that too would have been an interesting conversation, but I think this is the one that people have probably come for. So I'm Peter Kasselman. I'm an identity enthusiast. I make people's problems go away, and I'm currently volunteering as the lead product manager for some of our offerings at Microsoft around identity, specifically workload identity, and I'll talk more about that later. Before we dive into it, I want to talk a little bit about utilities. So some of the things that's interesting about utilities, whether it's water or electricity or telecommunications, is that essentially utilities provide us with essential services. They're also infrastructure intensive, right? They require a lot of money and a lot of effort to keep up, to maintain, to run. And they also end up being regulated. And they're regulated for very good reasons, because they're critical to society. They have to be reliable, they have to be fairly priced, and they have to be accessible, and they have to be safe. So those are utilities in general. So there are two new utilities which we didn't really have 10 years ago. That is suddenly, or maybe 15 years ago, that is suddenly beginning to emerge. On the one end, we have AI, and the other one is identity. And the question is, we've got these two utilities, and when we combine them, the question is, what's going to happen, right? What's going to be the implications of these two critical, what's the interaction between these two critical utilities? Innovation always happens where you have this sort of disciplines intersect, where you have these different, all the interesting things happen at the tide lines, right? If you're at the coast, it's between high water and low water. That's where the interesting things are in the rocks. It's all the intersection points that's interesting. So let's look a little bit. I'm going to talk about AI for identity. How do we use AI for identity? So the good news is we've actually been doing this for a while, right? Certainly with things like document and biometric verification and identity protection. We've been using, when you use your mobile phone to unlock, that's artificial intelligence at work for you. So we've been doing that for quite a while. Also, threat detection and fraud prevention, again, identity protection, right? These are things that's also been happening for quite some time, and we've been investing in that, detecting when there's abnormal transactions, people are logging in from unexpected places, or just different behaviors from usual trigger our fraud systems. And of course, things like dynamic policy and compliance, continuous authentication, things like that. So we've been doing these kinds of things with AI for some time. But there is so much more that we could do. Certainly with decision support systems, making decisions about identity with the help of AI, figuring out the posture, your compliance posture, AI is going to help us with that as well, for sure. Also assisting those, what I call the expertise elsewhere customer. We were talking about this during the break. Our customers are experts. They're experts at their business, as they should be. But they're not experts at identity. So how can we use AI to make identity more accessible, more explainable? How do we help them with AI to understand their identity needs and understand what technology choices they should be making or could be making? And then another one, authoring and understanding things like policies. So one of the big drives in the identity space over the last sort of year or two, one of them is around authorization. One of the biggest challenges we've had with authorization is externalizing authorization is really, really challenging, right? And everybody does that a little bit differently, and authorization is not that different from business logic, right? So these things end up being intertwined. Now, the moment you want to externalize authorization, you need to start writing policies, and you need to do this in any number of languages. And that's actually turned out to be quite a challenge. But this is where large language models may actually be interesting. I'm going to show you sort of a mock-up or an imagination of what this could be or how this might work. So instead of having to go and author a complex policy, what if you could simply ask an AI to generate a policy for you and express that in any number of languages? Because it turns out, when it comes to authorization policies, those things are expressed not in one or two languages, but many, many different ones, even proprietary ones. What if the AI could then go off and sort of start thinking about how it might want to answer this, and even go as far as maybe suggesting those languages in the different expressions or expression languages that you might desire. The other challenge that we see very often is people have these policies, but they don't actually know what they mean. And so getting these policies or having people or having these AIs help people interpret policies is very common for an IT administrator to inherit a system that is absolutely overwhelmed with hundreds of policies created by 3 or 4 people that preceded them in their role, and they don't really know what that means, right? And so basically, what if you could give it a policy and the AI can tell you, very nice summary, very succinctly, this policy allows a qualified maintenance agent to run diagnostics, change settings, or update firmware on a boiler system, but only if the maintenance contract is active, right? What if you could feed those complex policies and get these kinds of responses back? And so those are some of the applications that we see, but it's not the only ones. There is so much more that we can do with the power of AI to support identity. But AI is also dual-use technology, and it's becoming very accessible, as you pointed out, $30, that's amazing. Think what our adversaries can do with that kind of power, right? And glad to see Emily here. She's given an excellent talk about how AI is used to do things like deep fakes, right? And there are people actually now, face and voice, that make a living out of this, right? They project themselves as some celebrity. There's somebody who makes a living out of doing this, imitating Tom Cruise, but then using that with social engineering. So if you think about how the challenges around social engineering, you're really dealing with humans, you're influencing their decision, and I have artificial intelligence that sort of tricks all the cues that we have around thinking about what is it to deal with a human. And it's, we're really relying, how do you prevent social engineering? You're relying on people making judgments. And these AIs are very, very good at explaining things to us or telling us things or helping adversaries to tell us things that will make us say yes when we really should be saying no. There are other of the other applications too, things that we're beginning to see. So the use of AI, not just in terms of exploiting large language models. AI is much more than large language models. Adversaries beginning to use AI techniques to do reconnaissance of networks, of digital infrastructure, using that to evade, to cloak their activity, and then to automate attacks. Right, all of this being done with the aid of AI. And so the rate of attacks that we're seeing is going to increase as the price drops, as they pointed out. And so I think we have lots of opportunity in front of us, but we also have to be thoughtful about the fact that there will be other applications and uses of AI, especially as the price continues to drop. Now let's talk about the inverse, identity for AI. What is an AI? In the end, it's a very complex machine. There's massive data sets, there's workloads that needs to be trained, and then there are inference workloads that sort of take those models, apply them, and use them in reality. And if you can get into the data set, you can change how that AI is trained or what that AI is trained to do. If you can get into the training workload, you can change the training function and what it is optimizing for. You can change its results. And when you can get into it at the runtime, you can manipulate and change the inputs, and you can misrepresent the outputs. You can corrupt the AI. And so this is why we need identity for workloads. Now, I have the privilege, this is what I'm spending all my time on right now, is thinking about workload identity and how we make workloads secure. not just for AI, but for everything. Turns out we've had this problem forever, but now it's becoming even more urgent because one of the things that's happening with AI is what I call follow the GPU. Customers are increasingly not caring so much about where they execute their AI workloads. They just need anywhere to execute their workload. That means that their workloads need to be portable across multiple clouds, but it also means you have to be able to manage your workloads across multiple clouds. And that means you need to manage the identity of your workloads across those clouds as well. And today, there's really no great solutions for that. And the key question that we want to be able to answer is, did the right workload have access to the right resource for the right reason at the right time? And we'll need standards for that. And so one of the efforts that we're driving right now is something called WIMSI, the Workload Identity in Multi-Service Environments. It is about a set of establishing and filling the gaps in the standards landscape around securing workload identities or developing those standards for workload identities. So if you're interested in this space, if you care about workload identity security, I'd love to have you participate in these forums. Now, identity for AI is also, there's also other things that we're going to have to think about. We already heard about this morning, delegation scenarios, right? How do I enable my AI avatar to go to a meeting on my behalf so that I don't have to? Or how do I enable my avatar to comment on a document so that I don't have to read the 60-page document and form an opinion, right? How can I do those things so that I don't have to? But then at the same time, if I'm delegating those scenarios, or in those scenarios, how do I let other people know, or how will they know who or what they are talking to and whose feedback they're really getting? Are they getting Peter's feedback, or are they getting Peter's avatar's feedback? And so we're going to need a set of technologies, but also social norms to develop around identity for AI. So there is the technical piece, right? How do we secure it? How do we make sure nobody tampers with it? But then there's the social aspects, right? How do we represent that? How do we make it so that somebody understands that they're working with an identity? And how much can we actually expect from end users to understand about this? I think both Jacoba and Katrina mentioned this. 450 million people are about to learn about digital wallets, right? I'm sort of concerned about the ability of so many people to learn so much. But with AI, we're going to have the same challenge, right? There is going to be a limit to how much we can expect the average citizen and person to learn about a technology that they may not necessarily want to learn about or need to learn about. So what's next? I think one thing that I would say, AI is not just about LLMs, right? I think that's sort of been the poster child because it's made this AI thing very topical and accessible to people. But AI is going to be in many other applications. So do remember that's more than that. We do have to secure the workloads and the data, right? If we do not have a foundation or a bedrock, if we fail to drive authorization and identity into the compute platforms that we use for these technologies, we are going to be in an incredibly difficult spot in another 5 years' time. When we experiment and play with these things, do think about the downsides. Do spend time thinking about all the unfortunate outcomes or the unexpected outcomes. I loved that. Would you solve that? Would you sell that to your mother? Think about those downsides, right? And then I think be responsible when in doubt, right? Just take the time to think about the implications. And then finally, I think we have enormous opportunity to go innovate in this space. So I think that's me. Apologies again for the delay. That was my mistake for sending the wrong presentation. Thank you.
Great presentation. Thank you, Peter. So I'll have a few questions and then I'll let the floor open. So first question to you, Peter, I'll start with you. Do you foresee that we end up creating digital avatars as like, digital IDs?
I think we will. It will come if it's not already there. When you're writing an email now, there's predictive text that tells you or suggests things for you. When you're writing a document, there is a co-pilot that will help you with formulation and suggesting paragraphs and text. And that's just one step away from letting them write it and representing you. I think that'll come. I don't know how soon or how quick. My expectation is these things are going to change quicker than we think. So yeah, I think we're gonna see that.
Any questions for Peter? Anybody?
So it's a very interesting concept of automating the generation of documentation for policies. As SailPoint is trying to do something similar for like group descriptions, similar. One thing I was thinking about that is that most likely you're going to see that 95 to 98% is going to be correct, and the remaining time is going to completely hallucinate. That's, of course, to a certain degree, true of our current documentation as well. Do you see any kind of discussions about that challenge?
Absolutely. It's actually a discussion that we're having internally. So the concept that I showed to you, we are playing with those ideas. Couple of observations. First thing, the AIs make mistakes, but so do humans, right? And so way back when, I have a bit of history with technology. When we were developing BitLocker, the key decision about whether BitLocker is a safe technology to deploy, i.e. it's not going to accidentally encrypt people's hard disks and lose the keys, was, is it more or less reliable than the hard disk itself, right? And the key criteria was that it had to be better, or the probability of having BitLocker fail had to be lower than the hard disk failing, because both of them result in catastrophic data loss. And so you have to sort of measure and benchmark against that. And so one way to answer that question is to say, let's benchmark against the probability of humans making mistakes. Now, the interesting thing about AI, I also got to work on autonomous vehicles at one point. One of the interesting things that I learned in that experience was humans are far less tolerable of machines making mistakes than of other humans, right? A vehicle committing a traffic violation, or a human driving a vehicle making a traffic violation is perceived one way. A vehicle committing a traffic violation on its own is perceived very differently. That is dangerous. The human, well, we all make mistakes, right? So there's sort of a bit of that going on. And so I think with hallucination, the other thing that we're also learning is that there are ways, if you ask the question well enough, if you construct the inputs sufficiently constrained, the hallucination does go down. So you get less and less hallucination. I think the final thing, and this is my view on this too, I think if you let an AI generate a policy and deploy it without validation, that is insanity, right? And actually just like for humans, right? And so I think a good way to think about it, that policy, that's a good first draft. Before you deploy it, you have to go and test it, and you have to go and you want to validate it before you deploy it to catch those cases where you still have hallucination. But yes, fantastic question, and this is perhaps one of the most, it's a really key question because it will also change how we think about architectures for authorization in the future as well. Yes?
Thanks for the talk. I'm wondering, how are you integrating AI ethics and AI, let's say risk management into this picture? Because you were also saying self-driving vehicles or autonomous vehicles. Like if we compare it to the acceptance of humans, humans get a penalty or go to jail or whatever. But what do we do with AI? And that also maybe links to the question, the story of Sue. He's saying we're going to have AI employees, but who's then accountable, right? And how do we deal with these ethical questions?
I think this is a question that we have to answer over time. I don't have a great answer. At Microsoft, we take the ethics, the implications, and the use of AI extremely seriously, right? And so this is a thing that everybody's really aware of within the organization and really thoughtful about it. I think generally, how will we deal with that as a society? I think how we think about liability is going to be interesting in these cases. Now, I want to be clear, I don't work on autonomous vehicles at the moment. That's not a space that I'm working on, and so maybe we can learn from that, but maybe that space will also learn from some of the things that we do. I think in the case of, is the policy correct or incorrect? Again, going back to, did we take enough care, right? Were we thoughtful about how we trained these models, the data sets that we used, but also then in deployment? Did we just deploy it, or did it just get deployed, or what kind of overview was there? I think the responsibility, the idea with co-pilots is they're helpers, not replacers, right? And I think that's a really good way to think about it.
I think the software platform provider should take the responsibility, because they actually give you the tools and they, for instance, the autonomous vehicles, in that case, the software provider should be responsible, because that is learning and that is giving you, and you subscribe to that service. That's an idea.
It's a bit like children and parents, like AI is a child, and we are the parents.
Yes, maybe. I think it's like any tool that you give someone, right? You want to make sure that if you use a chainsaw, right, does it have certain safety features, right? Will it stop when it hits an object in a certain way? Does it have an emergency shutdown? All of those things. I think any tool, it's a tool. I think about our cars, right? Companies invest enormous amounts of money in making cars safe, yet people still manage to harm themselves driving cars, right? Is that the fault of the vehicle provider or the driver? Sometimes it is the car, right? Faulty steering, brakes, etc. Those things get covered, but a lot of the times it's user error, right? Mistaken judgment, misuse, using a tool in an unintended way. And I think that those kind of things, as we sort of figure it out, I think that idea of AI as a tool, but I struggle to see how you can ever give absolute guarantees for any tool that you provide to someone. Even with children.
No, even we humans work with estimation. So I see you, for example, today. Tomorrow you have some beard or something. So I train my mind that you are 80% sure, because it's all statistics, right? So you are not looking exactly same as today. So machines also same. They work on statistics and estimations, and the only thing we can hope is machines we expect to be more precise and more accurate. They are, in the end, who has the power? Who will actually exercise that tool? In the end, it's a tool that's in for us, for humans.
I didn't thought about this whole AI, like how it works. I think one thing I have, I've never tested is just you really shrink it to a very basic steps. Like you have a whole process, then you chunk it to very specific tasks, and this AI just do this. Let's say you just clean the data, don't do anything else, don't think about it. I'll have a second guy, because I just copy paste. I have a second guy dealing with the making graphs, and then I have a third guy to make whatever reports it needs. So once they only focus on one task, I think the chance of getting an accurate answer is much higher. And then maybe you have another guy, you just check if this is a coherent story. You just check everybody's work. Don't create anything, just check it yourself. If you really think about why the hallucination comes, it's because they train on a large amount of the data that we human generate. And then humans have different opinions, even same things. When you have different opinions, you train based on different opinions. You just have to have different data, like not coherent answers. But I think, if you go back to very specific tasks, it tends to give you more accurate results. And then the second thing is talking about the punishments. I I mean, AI, if you think how you could go big far, it's constantly get punished. Every time making mistakes, OpenAI or whatever company, they're going to treat it. They're going to give you an evaluation formula. Oh, you're off, or they try to make an evaluation really close to zero, like no mistake at all. So it's constantly get updated, treated, and receive feedbacks. So, but yeah, there's no way you can go to very zero, like everything is accurate, because.
But then it's a mindset, right? There's, just like with the wallets, we would say 450 million people need to adopt it, right?
Yeah.
I think people still look at this as an IT party or a new technology or whatever, right? That's how they perceive it. And they would say it's still bits and bytes, 0 or 1, true or false. And I think as long as that exists, people expect a right answer. So I think there's a whole world ahead of us where we need to make sure that either the 450 million people are changing or something else needs to happen, right? Because people need to accept that AI is there to make the best decision, or well, try to make the best decision possible, but it's not yes, no. That's where AI comes into play and can help you out. And I think that's, for us, maybe clear, but for the larger world, like, they will blame the company that is replacing them as a driver with some kind of software for them that is overtaking the driving from them, right? So they will blame it to that company. Which I don't know is true, right? Because in the end, if you put statistics, we have less incidents if everyone is using AI or if everyone is driving themselves. Then you might say, the company did a great job because we have less accidents right now. I mean, I think that's still a tough
Absolutely challenge. Yeah.
I remember I was talking to Peter last time, and he said when there is a gold rush, the best business to be in is to sell shovels. So I think when these kind of new roles are like, the AI takes over some very administrative tasks or, procedural tasks, probably there is another set of jobs that will be created, which is similar to since 2007. Before 2007, there were no app developer jobs. iOS came in 2007, then you had this whole ecosystem of building apps. So probably we'll see such a new wave of creating jobs. Maybe not everybody is a virtual CTOs and everything else. Like you said, I like your idea where you said you are creating roles and regulations inside AI world. So, but even then, if you look at from outside, it's still part of your tool system. So it's a part of toolkit, right? So you still have your human-to-human interaction. So I think you will see a new way of jobs created, or a new way of working, a new way of social contracts. Like I said, in your car example, if there is a human error, then that person is liable. If the driver is this car, then it should be software provided. Sorry.
No, just to extend this idea of the car, when some of the car manufacturers recently were found to be taking the data from iPhones and the connections, they were storing text and such. There's this idea of liability, I think, that's important. Someone said it earlier. And I think as we think about these decisions and bring them to the businesses, who will then bring these to the consumers, there's this element of liability where we will need to be partners, I think. And I'm wondering if some of the commentators would have opinions on this or ideas. The idea, the connection to how do we bring identity and smart AI decisions, how does this intersect with protecting people, sustainability of the planet? How do we bring this step so it's not just automated, it's not just happening, but we have some sort of a governance, if that makes sense? Is there a governance connection to some of your ideas?
Yeah, I think that's an important question to ask, because again, artificial intelligence is not connected to us yet, right? Like, we need to have some connection to artificial intelligence, and if we have a way to have a digital identity that's owned by us, then you have inherent trust and accountability built into that system, because you have a mechanism for you to prove the chain of custody in the artificial intelligence. Whereas right now, if something happens with artificial intelligence and it's wrong, we don't really have a chain of custody to see, like, you can just look at its code. And then that is not really someone coding it. It could be it coding itself. It could be just wrong data that it was given. So if we have a mechanism to have identity solutions alongside AI, I think that's really the key to it.
This sort of ties into provenance, talking earlier a bit, that if we can follow this through and see where did the data come from, where did the coding come from.
Exactly. Who was it? Not necessarily like me, Paris, female, whatever, but like the identifier of where that happened.
Yeah, I think this idea of a supply chain, right, is generally very interesting in the software world in particular. And attacks on the supply chain is something that's been a big challenge, right? And I think an interesting question is, I think those things that we put in place in the supply it's really about bringing transparency to the supply chain, right? So that we can know which individuals, what software, what are the different software components that's running, what is the provenance of each of those components. I think the thing that we can hope for is transparency at most, right? I think that's, and then the ability to reason over that. But I think first, getting transparency into the technology supply chain itself is something that we owe ourselves. We have to do that.
We have some parallels in pharma industry. So you track, when you're making some medicine compound, so you have to track and trace the actual root compound, how it flows through until it's actually made as a medicine. So probably we can draw some real life examples and analogies to include in the governance framework that probably brings transparency into the supply chain, because we are dealing with software world, not the physical world. So,
and it's impossible to have transparency in the software supply world without identity, right? If you do not know the identity of that piece of software, the identity of the engineers that developed that, or at least whether they were authorized to work on that, and then the identity of the platforms that you're deploying it to, right? There are so many places in which you can introduce and undermine the integrity of the system. And that's really what we're like, that's my focus area. That's what I'm privileged enough to work on now, is thinking about how do we secure workloads at scale across multiple clouds. Because if we do not get our heads around that, we're going to have some big problems, not just for AI, but for everything, right? Every piece of software has this problem. AI is just more software.
I think we might end up building some good AI agents and then bad AI agents. So it's like, you have a red team and blue teams when you do pen testing. Probably we will use such models, probably.
I mean, I think the way, when I think about AI, I imagine people sitting around 200,000 years ago talking about fire. They just discovered fire. And now there's this debate, right? Can fire ever be safe? Because it already burned down one cave. And, I think we're going to be coming to grips with this technology. But just like fire, I think in the end, we'll figure out how we balance it, right, as a society as well. But it's a...
Yeah. So any last questions?
Yeah, so, and I think this touches upon all your excellent presentations. You didn't mention the incapacity of humans asking right questions or very precise questions. So whether or not the model is very well or flawed or not, or trained on the wrong data, being explicit about what you want or need or what your actual question is in a very precise manner is something that we are incapable of. And this is the of course, the human quality that we are somehow able to deal with this amongst one another, but having a technical system delivering a certain outcome without the knowledge of everything that goes around it, that is also of an influence, but is not included in a model. So how are we going to deal with this incapacity of humans of asking very precise questions? And pardon my limited ability to ask this question.
This is a great question. That's I've been thinking a lot. I actually really believe that every human has their unique potential in certain things. Like I can't dance, I can't draw. Like just I couldn't. I never thought about doing that. But analyzing data, get insights, that's something I just so passionate about. So I think this tool really empowered me to do something that I'm good at, and then take care of the rest of the thing that, like a very basic thing. So I think if you ask me to ask a question about drawing a picture, I will ask, okay, draw a picture, a teddy bear in the forest. That's all I can ask. But if you ask an artist to draw, okay, maybe a 3D, what kind of format, right? Because that's your expertise is. Yeah, I think in the end, what I'm picturing is everybody figure out what they are good at, and then they keep asking questions on that area. They will become much better than the rest of the crowd, and then they will provide much more value to the society. And then I think there's no reason for me to learn how to ask a question about drawing a picture, because now I'm not an expert. Maybe someone 100% good at that, they make a AI agents that can do 90% of what they are doing, and then I consult that agents and get whatever I need. So yeah, from that perspective, I really believe we all know how to answer the question that we are very good at or passionate about, but it's very difficult to train a human to ask a question that they're not interested in. And why do that? I don't even think that's necessary with this tech.
Prompt engineering and domain expertise within the AI context.
I would answer that. I'm less optimistic than Zhu about humans' ability to ask good questions, even when they are interested in the subject. I think we often demand too much of our fellow humans as technologists, right? Learn how to use this technology, that technology, and it doesn't always work. The EID, the wallet story is going to be very interesting to watch. We're asking 450 million people to become custodians of their own data. I don't know. I'm not sure if the reward function is there. Humans respond to reward functions. Now, it might be that AI can help you create good questions, and I've certainly seen people do this, right? They use a large language model to help them hone the question until they get an answer or a good quality question. But there is no guarantee that even that process is going to get you to a good outcome, right? I think that is, I think, just like expecting every human to be a good driver, expecting every human to be good at asking questions is different. Now, I do think one of the key skills in the future in the technology, let's call it in the white-collar space, right, the information worker space. One of the key skills in the future may not be knowing things. It might be the ability to ask good questions. That might be the thing that you look for when you're interviewing people in the future. But the vast majority of people, just like the vast majority of people, are not great programmers, right? It might just be that this is another one of those things that we may have just created a new niche or a new skill that we want to look for.
Thank you.
I have a question. So when I work with AI, I sometimes ask like ambiguous questions on purpose, and it never asks me a question back. So do you think it will ever go into that direction where it actually tries to ask you for, okay, what do you actually mean? Or how do you want it? It's like more like in a human conversation kind of style.
I must ask worse questions than you, because it does sometimes ask me, like, do you mean this or that thing, right?
No. Chatbots do. We have chatbots that do actually. They refine your question. They point to you a specific way. It is there in some shape or form.
So it's happened to me, but of course it's not going to happen to everyone. I think I once described any conversation that you have with an AI as it's like a conversation that you have with somebody that you meet in a pub on a Friday night. They're going to tell you interesting things. You might enjoy it. It is not necessarily true, so you should go and check. And just because it was a good conversation, and some of this is just generally true, right? Just because the AI is telling you things that you expect to hear, still doesn't mean it is true, right? I think learning to doubt yourself and to doubt the answers that you get back, that's another skill to think about.
Great session. Thank you so much for coming and participating in this session. Thank you. Thank you.